Imagine what it'd be like to not just talk about making a difference, but to actually make a positive change right here and right now. I'm joy activist Derek McCloud, and today I will be interviewing Dr. Patrick Melder. Patrick is going to use Bitcoin and the power of sound money to help create a Bitcoin circular economy in Guatemala called Bitcoin Lake. I encourage you to watch this whole interview and learn with me how together we can change the narrative and make a positive difference in the world with Bitcoin. In this interview, we will learn how Bitcoin will be used to help alleviate poverty, create green energy, encourage financial literacy, and provide hope to people in need. And since you are here, why don't you go ahead and click like and subscribe. For every 10 people who like and subscribe from this video in the year 2022, my team will donate $1 to help fund Bitcoin Lake. This means for every 1,000 people that like and subscribe, we will donate $100 in Bitcoin. It's a very easy way for you to make a difference right here and right now. All right then, let's go on to the interview. Thanks for being here. So anyways, my name is Derek, and here we are interviewing Dr. Patrick Melder, and he is the founder and creator of Bitcoin Lake. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. It's and I'll start by saying it's Melder, like a welder, but with an M. But no, that's all. That's all good. That's all good. That's a common mispronunciation. Yeah, Patrick Melder. I'm an ear, nose, and throat surgeon, sleep medicine physician. I practiced for 20 years, mostly in the Army, and the latter part of my career here in the community. We're in Kennesaw, but I practiced in Marietta, Georgia at a large healthcare system. Trained in the Army at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C., and I've been a believer since I was a sophomore or freshman in high school. It's been so long, and extensive work in the church, growing up in the church, and I was a lay missions pastor at a small Bible church in Maryland when I was in the Army, and so missions is a big thing for me, and expanding God's kingdom is a big thing for me. And I first got into Bitcoin in 2018. I'd known about it for quite some time, but really started doing a little bit of research of it in 2018, and that's when I first bought Bitcoin, was in 2018, and then went further down the rabbit hole, which we can talk about. But that's me in a nutshell. And I'm also a serial entrepreneur. I've started two companies. One company right now is on the verge of being really successful, and I'm also an inventor. I've got about 30 patents, and I've done a lot of work with medical device companies as a consultant and licensing technology to them. So kind of done a lot of different things, yeah.
Awesome. And why would you say Bitcoin matters? Like, why is Bitcoin important, especially in a place like Guatemala?
Bitcoin matters because it changes the narrative of the economy. And Robert Breedlove, one of his favorite quotes is, money is the base layer of our society. And I firmly, after studying Bitcoin economics, I believe that to be true. And our base layer has been corrupted and broken for the last 100 years under the fiat system. And as difficult as it may be for Westerners, as for people who live in the U.S. to get ahead and to stay ahead and to save, we can imagine how much more difficult it is for those in developing countries. So Bitcoin, if Bitcoin fixes the base layer, Bitcoin's going to fix a lot of things.
Gotcha. Well, while I was researching Bitcoin Lake and I found out it was in Guatemala, I was super excited because I've been on a mission trip to Guatemala. I actually lived there for 3 months and actually swam in Lago Atitlan, which I believe is where Bitcoin Lake is. And such a beautiful lake, but I was also fascinated to see that there was some trash and some garbage in places. But can you tell us a little bit about Bitcoin Lake and what the vision is?
Absolutely. Lake Atitlan, primarily the work that we've done is in Panajachel, but there are a dozen or so communities around the lake. I think the total population is about 300,000 people around the lake, and it's in the western highlands of Guatemala. It is one of the most beautiful lakes in the world. I think it actually hits the list of the top 10 most beautiful lakes in the world. The unfortunately, there is a lot of pollution. It's like a Lake Tahoe. So if you're familiar with Lake Tahoe, back in the 80s and 90s, it was really polluted by a lot of contaminants coming into the lake, and Lake Atitlan is the same way, but it's a beautiful, beautiful place. The work that we did in Panajachel, I took my family there every summer for 6 years. We worked with the school and Josue School and did art camps, developed some great relationships there. And what I wanted to do was basically model what was going on, or what is going on in El Zonte, El Salvador with Bitcoin Beach. So I basically wanted to create a Bitcoin circular economy in Panajachel for several reasons. One is to change the economic situation, bring people up out of poverty, and so that's number one, is to change the economic narrative for Guatemalans. Number two was to bring educational opportunity for children. If Bitcoin is a transformational invention and technology, which it is, we should provide an opportunity for those who have been left behind and marginalized. So if we can teach them about Bitcoin now and the technology, then we're going to give them a great advantage economically, just as a learning tool. And I think our ultimate goal, and we're working towards this goal, is to use Bitcoin to transform the lake and create aligned incentives to get everybody around the lake to want to clean the lake using an environmentally friendly technology, and Bitcoin's going to be the cornerstone of that. And I know we'll talk about that, but one of the unique things about Lake Atitlan and the communities around it is there's a lot of strife or animosity, I guess, political strife about what goes on within the lake, because it's a national treasure in Guatemala and it's really guarded. And there have been situations where people have come in from outside of that area, Guatemalans from Guatemala City, rich Guatemalans from Guatemala City, coming in to try to manipulate what's going on around the lake, and the locals around the lake are just left out of that process. So we want to make sure that Lake Atitlan stays a national treasure, but we want everybody involved. We don't want people marginalized. And Bitcoin, because of the way Bitcoin is structured, it promotes equality and equity. So anything that follows from the use of Bitcoin should promote equality and equity, and that's kind of the ultimate goal there. Exactly.
I like to say that Bitcoin is mathematical purity. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care what you've done or what you look like. It works. One thing that's interesting is when I came back to the United States, I really felt like God wanted me to help the people of Guatemala. And so there was a particular missionary, and I felt like I was supposed to give him $200. And so what I did was I took my $200. This is 2005, mind you. I used Western Union, and it took about a week for the $200 to arrive. And by then, there was a $30 fee, so now we're at $170. And then lo and behold, there was a $10 processing fee to go from dollars to quetzales. And by the time my friend received the money, he had $160 worth of quetzales. How does Bitcoin solve something like that? And how can Bitcoin be revolutionary for the people of Guatemala?
Derek, that's a great question. In fact, I went down to El Salvador about a month ago, a little over a month ago, and went to El Zonte, tried to understand, what was going on there in El Salvador. I've done a lot of reading about what was going on in El Salvador. Alex Gladstein has done some great articles talking about this problem with remittances. And if you look at Western Union, it's a $400 million business for Western Union to provide remittances in El Salvador. And you're basically describing what it is to be a rent seeker. Western Union is a rent seeker. They provide no economic opportunity. They provide no value to that transaction other than an exchange. And they're taking significant portions of that money without providing any benefit to the economy. In El Salvador, 70% of the Salvadorans are unbanked. I presume that it's about the same in Guatemala. And the other thing about So you're talking specifically about the fees, but what's not understood in that process is if your friend doesn't live in a major city in Guatemala or El Salvador, if they live in a village, they've got to take a day off from their wages. They've got to rent a bus or get on a bus, pay something to get on a bus, travel to the city. In El Salvador in particular, the gangs aren't stupid. They know where the Western Union offices are or the MoneyGram offices are. So, the relative will go to the Western Union office. She may risk her life because she may be extorted or mugged for her money. Then she has to go back to her village. And so she's not only has she lost money in the transaction, she's lost money in her wages and potentially, her health and her life. So that's the side of the story that nobody really thinks about. And then I was in Guatemala recently, and I was in Antigua, walked by a MoneyGram store, and I think it was a Saturday night, but it was all barred up, right? So if your relative needs, if you've got a family member back in El Salvador or Guatemala, and they need money on a Saturday night, you're SOL. You have no opportunity to get them money, and Bitcoin fixes that because you can, on the Lightning Network now, you could send money almost for free. You could send $1, you could send $10, you could send $1,000, you could send $1 million, almost instant. Well, it depends on the amount, but instantly, almost free. So it will significantly change that narrative, and I think that Western Union, MoneyGram the next couple of years are going to be pretty rough for them in El Salvador and in places like Guatemala.
That's right. And one of the things I'm the most excited about in this interview is talking about changing the narrative of Bitcoin. I believe Bitcoin is going to be used as a force of good. So let's talk about how Bitcoin can help alleviate poverty, especially in Guatemala.
Absolutely. I think that and it's key that you said alleviate, not eliminate, because I think that it would be naive to think that we can eliminate poverty. Jesus made it very clear that you will always have the poor with you. It's not our goal to eliminate poverty. We should, as Christians and just as people, we should have a desire to alleviate suffering of our fellow man. And that's important because those who have a lot, we seem to think that we're blessed because we have material possessions. And that would mean that God's not good, okay? You can be poor, physically, materially poor, but still be blessed by the Lord. So material possessions are not an indication of the Lord's blessing to you. So that does not mean, though, that we can't still use our gifts to alleviate poverty. So how will Bitcoin alleviate poverty? I think fundamentally, as Westerners, the way that we create wealth is we buy assets. If you're fortunate enough to have a home, you put, at least in the U.S., most people put a lot of their money into a home, and that becomes an asset historically that just grows in value, and that in some cases can create generational wealth. Another asset might be stocks. So you can put your money into stocks and they appreciate in value. If you don't have a bank, like in El Salvador or Guatemala, no one's going to lend you money. Okay, so you can't even start that first step of accumulating assets. You can't buy property. You can't buy stocks. So Bitcoin, you become your own bank with Bitcoin. And not only do you become your own bank, so you don't have to go through the KYC, know your customer, AML, anti-money laundering, things that you have to do with a bank. You become your own bank, and you own your own property. Bitcoin's property. It's a digital property, and you can create digital wealth that you can pass through generations. And I think that, listening to Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy, who's done a brilliant work with Bitcoin and the speculative attack that he's performed with his company and buying bonds or issuing bonds to purchase Bitcoin, he does this great thing of describing the fact that Bitcoin allows you to transfer wealth across time, sellability across time, and sellability across space. And because of those properties, you can instantly transfer Bitcoin across time and space, and you can hold it for indefinitely because it's basically the purest form of monetary energy that you can hold, and because it's digital, you can hold it forever. And I think that just foundationally will transform people's ability to own wealth, generate wealth, and pass that wealth down. And I'm a big proponent of understanding the equation that, Benjamin Franklin said, at least it's attributed to him, that money is time. And a lot of times we don't really think about what that really means. When I hand my dollar over for that cheap plastic toy made in China, do I really understand I'm taking my time and I'm giving it for a cheap piece of plastic, right? So if my money is my time, what is my time but my energy? What's my energy but my life? And you can equate that all the way back to life energy. So I think that concept, that's something that Bitcoin teaches you, and it would force us to not consume as much, to save and to value our time, because our time ultimately is our scarcest resource.
Man, that's so good. And we talk about, I've learned how Bitcoin eliminates the middleman, right? So we don't need a bank, we don't need a government in order to transact money through Bitcoin, right? It's a permissionless system. And what's interesting too is when I put my money in a bank, you got to think about how they're making money. I mean, when I go to my bank, there's a giant building and there's people wearing suits and ties and nice clothes and air conditioning and all this energy being used. And yet, we know that when I give them $1,000, they're going to invest $900 and then maybe just keep $100, which is called fractional reserve, I believe.
Yep.
But when we own Bitcoin, we're making money, we're creating value, and I'm just really excited about that. Hey guys, I'm going to tell you about my new favorite app. Did you know that you can easily buy and send Bitcoin without fees using Strike? It's one of the best and easiest apps to use. In this description below, there is a referral link that will give you $5 free just for signing up. This is the app that I recommend that you use to send some Bitcoin to Bitcoin Lake. Go ahead and try it now. Trust me, you will love this app. I actually have a master's in education, and I believe education can really change the world. And why do you think Bitcoin is important to financial literacy? And why is education so important in Guatemala to helping alleviate poverty and just changing lives?
That's great. I will say that education can change the world, but it's got to be the right education with the right information.
That's true.
So we've seen a lot of bad information being passed recently. So I think that, just getting back to, the hope that Bitcoin can provide for those that are living in poverty in developing countries, I think that with you and I, we live in a privileged society. We live in a country, the greatest country in the history of the world. And to really understand what that means, in the history of the world, and that's not just me being an American, that's just reality the way it is. I didn't understand the economic system. I don't think you understood the economic system, at least before Bitcoin. And I don't think we can fundamentally change our society. I don't think we can fundamentally change communities. We can't fundamentally give them hope unless they understand what's wrong. And I mean, I'm a surgeon. I'm in the upper crust educationally of society, and I don't live a lavish lifestyle. I don't have a fancy car or live in a giant mansion or anything like that, but I was struggling to kind of keep up. I've got 3 girls, putting them through college and all that, and if I'm struggling with my income level, imagine the struggle that is going on in Guatemala. And providing education, and I'm a problem solver. So if you provide education, you're basically providing information. When you provide correct information and it's true, and you can look at what's not true, then that's the value of education. But if you're blind, then you can't see what's wrong, and that's why education is so important.
That's right. And I believe it's important to teach people how to think and how to be solution seekers. And, for a long time in my career, I was just living paycheck to paycheck. And it'd be really stressful if Christmas came around because, you buy your gifts and, oh no, how do I pay rent or mortgage? And it wasn't until I got into Bitcoin, I learned how to dollar cost average and just buy like $10 a day in Bitcoin. And after 5 years, that changed everything for us. And, now, you and I are both Christians, but can you speak a little bit about why people of other faiths or why even non-Christians might be interested in donating or helping out Bitcoin Lake?
Absolutely. And I want to make that clear that our mission at Bitcoin Lake is because of my heart that comes from my faith. But the mission of Bitcoin Lake spans faiths, gender, ethnicities, whatever. I mean, we're trying to transform a community. I just happen to be a Christian trying to do this. We're not trying to preach the gospel or anything like that. And if you want to know about Jesus, I'm happy to tell you about Jesus, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to transform a community, so anybody can be involved. And I want this to be a wide breadth of the Bitcoin community because I think even in Christian circles, and I think you and I have faced this, trying to educate Christians about Bitcoin is tough. So Bitcoiners have a unique ability to understand what we're trying to do. And that's what we need. We need people who understand what we're trying to do regardless of our faith, because we're trying to help our fellow man. And that spans religions, in my opinion. And I think the other, I just want to circle back about the educational piece again, in particular with Guatemala, and probably in most developing countries, but in particular in Guatemala. Latin American culture, because of the Spanish and just the way the culture is they don't question authority. It's just part of their culture not to question authority. When you introduce something like Bitcoin, that starts kind of raising a flag that maybe the authorities aren't, taking care of us like they should. So when you don't question authority, your critical thinking skills are limited, because if you think what's going on around you is correct, you don't try to think critically as to why it might be wrong. And as we start teaching about Bitcoin in Panajachel, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about the node structure. Why did Satoshi set up the issuance of Bitcoins separate from the validation of Bitcoins, checks and balances? So that's a critical thinking skill, the whole game theory thing. So if you can get children to start thinking critically, not just provide them information, but to get them to think critically, that is powerful. And that's if they don't learn how to save in Bitcoin, if they can't pass generational wealth on with Bitcoin, but we can teach them how to think critically, that's enough. Obviously, that's not our ultimate goal. We want to teach them all about Bitcoin, but man, it would be just so phenomenal to teach these kids how to think critically with the technology.
Yeah, I've heard Max Kaiser say most people get into Bitcoin for the investment to make money, but then they stay for the revolution. And we're absolutely changing the world for the better with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin doesn't care what faith you are. It doesn't care what you believe. It's just math.
That's right.
And I heard Dan Held say that if we could trust governments, if we could trust people, we wouldn't need Bitcoin. But since we can't, since we all fail, since we all make mistakes, you have a system that no one is in control of. You have money that Bitcoin isn't favoring one person over another. It's a mathematical code that works. So let's talk a little bit more about green energy, because I've heard so much news saying, oh, Bitcoin uses so much energy and that's why a different coin that uses less energy is going to be better. But I don't know about you, but the traditional brick and mortar banks, those use a lot of energy, air conditioning and the electricity for the internet, and cars, people driving their cars to and fro. Why do you think Bitcoin is good for green energy?
I'll tell you why it's good, but let's kind of address, the FUD of energy consumption with Bitcoin. I mean, we just came through the Christmas season. We use more energy to light Christmas trees and ornament our houses than the amount of energy is spent on Bitcoin per year. So if we're really that concerned about the environment, if we're really concerned about making sure that we offset what's going on with Bitcoin, we probably shouldn't have any Christmas tree lights and ornaments on our home. So let's put that in perspective. If you look at the amount of energy that goes into not only the brick and mortar bank, but the ATM machines, all the computer systems that route all that money around the world. I don't remember the exact statistic, but Bitcoin energy consumption is a fraction of the traditional banking system, and we're basically preserving energy. And I do want to talk about green energy with Bitcoin, but let's get back to the example of the concept of time is energy, is money and whatnot. And let's think about gold. And when you mine gold, you expend energy. The physical miner, when he's pounding at the line of gold, the stream of gold in the rock, the vein of gold, he's expending energy. Then he puts it on the conveyor belt. There's energy. Then he puts it into the truck. That's energy. But along each one of those paths, there's a loss of energy, right? So I'm pounding away at the rock. I'm sweating. That's a loss of energy. The conveyor belt's taking the gold up the line. There's friction, heat. There's loss of energy there. The truck's going. There's heat generated from the truck. So there's a loss of energy along the way. And when you lose energy, you lose value. Now think about it in terms of, so let's take it even further so we can make this example come full circle. So the truck goes to the printer, where they print or press the bullion, and then that's transported to the bank. You've got to pay for the security guard. The security guard's got to get to the bank, and he's losing energy because, he's driving a car and there's heat generation. So you get this loss of energy, which is a loss of value all along the way. And then you put it into a brick and mortar building with air conditioning and all that, loss of energy, loss of value. Now think about Bitcoin mining. How do you create money with Bitcoin? You plug a computer, an ASIC, into the wall, take that energy, solve a mathematical problem, cryptographic problem, you solve it, and if you get it correctly, you add a block to the blockchain and you've created money like that. There's no loss of energy. Or we know there's a loss of energy because of the heat generation from the ASIC, but if you compare that loss of energy and that loss of value compared to the long line of loss of value in the traditional sense, Bitcoin is more energy efficient as a money in that respect. Okay, so that's kind of a key concept. Now, why will Bitcoin save the environment? Well, because everything associated with the production of Bitcoin, if you think about the building, the ASIC miner, the person you're paying, the land you purchase, those are all pretty much fixed cost and not variable, and you could pay those off pretty quickly. So really the only variable cost in the production of Bitcoin is the energy cost. So is it more economic for me to produce Bitcoin with miners in my home and my garage, or should I go to an industrial site and mine Bitcoin? Well, economically, it's going to be cheaper for me to go to an industrial site and get industrial rates for my energy. And Bitcoin by nature seeks the cheapest energy, okay? In fact, if you look at what the Bitcoin Mining Council put out back in October, upwards of 60% of the energy that goes into producing Bitcoin right now is renewable energy. And if you look at the recent Square report and the ARK investment report looking at Bitcoin mining using renewables, solar, if you look at solar energy consumption in a grid or input into a grid, solar right now can only meet 40% of the demand of a grid, okay, because of load balance and peak hours and what we call the duck curve. With Bitcoin, so 40%. If you add Bitcoin mining with batteries and solar, you could meet 90% of the need of a grid, okay? Now, we don't use batteries now because they're expensive. Well, if you've got Bitcoin tied to your electrical grid, you're basically producing an ROI immediately, so you can offset the cost of those batteries. So that's how Bitcoin's going to transform the energy sector. We see with upstream data, we see with Great American Mining, we've got Bitcoin miners that are producing Bitcoin off-grid using flared natural gas. Our plan in Bitcoin Lake is to basically create a solar grid with batteries and create a sustainable, reliable energy grid in Panajachel. You know, when you go down there, the power goes out, and sometimes it's really inconvenient. It's noticeable, and our goal is to build out a reliable, sustainable energy grid using solar. We want to use biodigesters and use animal waste, potentially human waste, generate methane and burn that, and with the generator, turn a Bitcoin miner and generate Bitcoin. If you look at the electrical grid in Texas, ERCOT, which is one of the 3 major electrical grid islands in the U.S., you've got the Eastern Grid, the Western Grid, and ERCOT, which I can never remember what ERCOT stands for, but it's the electrical grid that controls Texas. They have hooked up Bitcoin mining companies to their grid to act as a load balance, so that at peak times of demand, the miners can turn on and off to balance the load of renewable energy sources. And that's the problem with going all renewable is the sun only shines for 8 hours of the day on a sunny day. The wind only blows for certain amounts of time, and you can't predict. Usually when you trying to provide energy on a grid, you have to predict in advance how much energy you're going to have to provide. And if you look at natural gas, nuclear, coal, those provide the major load, but you have to spin those up slowly. And natural gas you can spin up pretty quickly, but renewables you can't. They cannot provide a reliable balance to the needs of an electrical grid. And Bitcoin mining with batteries provides a great opportunity for load balance in the electrical grid. So I love talking about it because we're going to be doing it in Guatemala, and I get really frustrated when I hear about Bitcoin causing, fish to fry in the boiling oceans, because I just know it's not true. And Bitcoin mining must seek the cheapest energy. The cheapest energy is renewable energy.
That's right. I love how Bitcoin incentivizes innovation.
Absolutely.
And so, and also I've heard of people using their ASICs to heat up their own house during the winter. So, and then there's a lot of energy that's wasted in different power plants
right.
and such. And even, what's it called when you get energy from water?
Hydroelectric, yeah.
Hydroelectric.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hydroelectric areas where energy is just not being used, and we can mine Bitcoin there and then transfer that energy to wherever we need to.
Well, that's the other important point, Derek, is there is a lot of wasted and stranded energy. In fact, in China, there's a lot of wasted energy. They've built these giant hydroelectric plants, dams, in the middle of nowhere, and they have to waste a lot of that energy because they can't. Electricity can only be shipped a certain distance across lines. Otherwise, it just loses. It's just not cost effective. And in the history of civilization, especially in modern times, we have built societies and cities around energy production sites. Near dams, near nuclear power facilities, near major coal mining facilities. With Bitcoin, we can now decentralize energy production. So we can now take this model that we're trying to produce to do in Guatemala. If that's successful, which it should be, we could take that model and we could dump it in the middle of Zimbabwe, where you've got a community sitting on top of a bunch of sun. They've got free energy, but they can't use it because no one's going to come out. It's not cost effective for anybody to come out there and drop a line. And so we're going to be able to take energy to people versus people having to come to energy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
This is really getting me excited. You talked a little bit about gold. I want to talk about scarcity. Why is it important that there's only 21 million Bitcoin and there'll never be any more? I heard someone say that gold has perceived scarcity, right? We think it's scarce, but you can always, if the price of gold rises, you can mine more gold, but Bitcoin has actual scarcity. So why is it important to have Bitcoin be scarce, and why, maybe you could talk about Austrian economics versus Keynesian economics and why it's important to understand that.
Okay, great. And just for the audience's sake, I'm self-educated. I'm not an economist, but I can definitely speak to those subjects. But, there's perceived scarcity of gold because if right now gold, and I haven't checked the price, I don't check the price of gold daily, but, it's about $1,800 an ounce right now. If gold was $10,000. Okay, let's think about it this way. If we had a gold mine right here, and gold is at about $1,800 an ounce, and you've got a certain number of crew out here digging for gold, if gold became $10,000 an ounce, you'd probably double or triple your guys to dig harder and deeper. They'd probably be working triple, double shifts to get as much gold out of that ground as possible. And what happens with that, when you do that, there's a natural equilibration. And every gold mine around the world would be doing that. Every miner around the world would be doing that. So it might be $10,000 an ounce for as long as it took for the supply to catch up, but as soon as the supply caught up, then you'd probably have a drop in the amount of gold again. The really cool thing about Bitcoin is if the price of Bitcoin goes up, you can do the same thing, but you're not going to get more Bitcoin. Recently we went through an all-time high of 69,000. You could plug in as many ASIC miners as you want to, but because of the difficulty adjustment within the Bitcoin code, you're not going to get any more Bitcoin than what's programmed to come out. And that concept is just fundamentally unique, and that's what allows Bitcoin to beat even gold in its scarcity. And I think probably from a intellectual standpoint, it's really hard because Bitcoin's not a physical thing. Even though it has the same properties as gold, which is a physical thing, and even better properties, because it's not physical, it's a hard thing to understand. And in the way I like to think, that's what makes it unique in trying to describe who God is, because we can't see, feel, touch God, but he's got properties that we can describe, and I think that's what's really cool about Bitcoin and my faith. Yeah.
I love that. And for me as a Christian, I believe the Bible says he who Christ has set free is free indeed. And I believe that Bitcoin is economic freedom, while I see God as being spiritual freedom.
Absolutely.
So let's talk real quick about hope. We have some youth growing up in Guatemala, and how would Bitcoin provide hope to those people? Well,
I think, all we have to do is look to the example of El Salvador next door and what was going on with Bitcoin Beach in El Zonte. I've interviewed the principals of Bitcoin Beach on my podcast, and just hearing what they've been able to do with Bitcoin in their small community. You're growing up at a small beach town in El Salvador, which would be no different than growing up in Guatemala. You don't really have any educational or work opportunities when you finish, whatever schooling that you've got. So you've got a choice. I mean, you can, kind of scrap around trying to find jobs, sell pupusas on the side of the road, or you can join a gang, and that's really kind of the dichotomy. That there is no choice in between for a lot of these kids growing up. The other very unique thing about Central America, Latin America, is, especially in El Salvador and Guatemala, is a lot of kids grow up in broken homes. You'll have, it's endemic, you'll have a young couple get together, they get married, they have children, the father, after seeing that having family is too much responsibility, will leave the wife with the kids, abandon the family, go to the next village, and do the same thing. And this goes on village after village and generation after generation. So you've got children growing up without a father figure, and obviously gangs fulfill that father figure for a lot of these children, and that's the choice. And with Bitcoin, you're giving them hope because you're allowing them to earn money. They don't have to make a choice between not doing anything or doing a menial task. They can earn Bitcoin, have it appreciate in value, and they don't have to rely on the gangs to provide money for their family or whatever. I think, fundamentally, that's how Bitcoin's going to provide hope in these smaller communities that just don't have access to opportunity.
That's brilliant. And, I also find a lot of hope in Bitcoin because right now our nation is $30 trillion in debt. I heard something like, and I hope I'm getting this right, but 40% of all the money that's ever been printed was printed in the last 12 months.
That's right, 18 months, yeah.
And then our U.S. dollar is just losing value at 7%. Like, inflation is just wild, but when we have Bitcoin, we're able to hold on. No one can rob our wealth through inflation, and also no government or entity can take our money either. And so these people in Guatemala, once they have Bitcoin, if you teach them how to properly store it and protect it, that can stay with them, and they can actually change their lives for the better.
Absolutely.
So what's the best way for people to reach you or find you?
Well, I'm very active on Twitter. My personal Twitter feed is at ENT Surge, so ear, nose, and throat surgery, so ENT Surge. And obviously the Bitcoin Lake Twitter handle. Now, it's not Bitcoin Lake on Twitter, and that's a long story. It's at Lake Bitcoin, so just flip it backwards. But you could also search on the hashtag Bitcoin Lake. That is a proper hashtag. And then you can email me, pmelder@mac.com. People can reach out to me. I don't mind answering questions via email as well.
How much money are you trying to raise for Bitcoin Lake?
Well, the first phase of the project, we have costed it out at about $26,000. And if you want to learn about the plan, because we've got a plan, you can actually read that on Medium. I've published that on Medium. So you could probably go onto Medium and search Bitcoin Lake on Medium, or my username on Medium is 67 Corvette. And so it's $26,000. You'll see the budget in there. And you can also donate directly. If you want to donate, you can donate directly to the school in Guatemala that we're working with. We have a Lightning address and a Bitcoin address through our Bitcoin Pay server. So that's kind of the goal right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great, and we'll post all that information in the description in the YouTube link. And let me get this straight. So you're going to be using Bitcoin to help alleviate poverty, promote green energy, provide financial education, and basically transform the world, right?
We're to start with a community, but then hopefully, transform the world. That's right.
I think that's pretty amazing. Well, thanks again for being on the show, and God bless.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Remember, for every 10 people who like and subscribe from this video, my team will donate $1 to Bitcoin Lake. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. Let's make a positive difference right here and right now. Also, don't forget to use my referral links below for some free Bitcoin. It helps keep this channel alive. Happy crypto, guys. Thanks for helping us make a difference. You guys rock.